So this is Photoshop, and for those of you that know how to use Photoshop, you probably don't need to watch these next quick videos. But for those of you that don't know how to use Photoshop, Photoshop is a very robust tool. Photoshop, you can draw, you can paint, you obviously can manipulate photos, you can do, hence the term photoshopping something. You can manipulate images, you can do a lot of stuff in Photoshop. And the thing about Photoshop is that back in the day there used to be these big thick books called like the Photoshop Bible, and they were like 600 pages long, and every new version of Photoshop would get a new book. Well, I guess the thing about Photoshop is that you have legacy users, meaning people that have been using it for so long, they are doing things a certain way. And with Photoshop, they just add new stuff. They don't really take a lot of the older stuff away. So that means that there is more than one way to do the exact same thing, which can make Photoshop very, very confusing. So I'm going to give you the overview. Now, if you open up Photoshop, hopefully you've downloaded Photoshop. And by the way, if you have a copy of Photoshop Elements, that's fine too. Photoshop Elements has way more than you will ever use, just like Photoshop. Now, if you're on the trial, that's fine. Try it out. And also, for those of my users out there that are using Krita or GIMP, what I'm teaching you in Photoshop, it applies to those particular pieces of software too, because any kind of graphic manipulation or art software is really based off of Photoshop. It really is. And it's really based on trying to lure Photoshop users away. So a lot of the shortcuts are the same. A lot of the setup is the exact same. Excuse me. So I just want you to keep that in mind. If just follow along with what I'm doing, and you'll find that just the basics that we need to know for pixel art, it's not a lot of stuff. It really isn't. Let's take a look at what's going on here. If you have Photoshop open up, you probably don't have anything here. I am a Photoshop user, so I got some stuff here. I was doing some 3D modeling, etc. I got like some stuff from one of my courses. I did a practice pixel art. So I want you to look up here. This says tileset in PSD. PSD stands for Photoshop document. And what that means is that Photoshop can do layers. And I'm going to show you what layers are. We're not really going to have to work with too many layers though, just to let you know. And if you want to save something with all of the layers intact, then you would save it as a PSD file, Photoshop documents file. The next one is PNG, which stands for I don't really remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember. It's not important. I don't know, something graphic. I don't know. But PNG essentially just means that when you want the image and no background whatsoever. So you can save, you can remove the background from a Photoshop document, and you'd be fine. But it won't flatten anything out. It won't flatten it out and give you white all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and, if you want to open something, just like with any other piece of software, you hit open. Photoshop made it really, really, really easy. This just shows recent. This shows your CC files. I wouldn't worry about any of this stuff, to be very honest with you, for what we're going to do. I just want to go to create new. Now, when we get to create new, I've got some custom stuff here already. So we are going to be working in pixels. By the way, if you're using Sprite, or if you're using Pixaki, or if you're using some other pixel program, it's the exact same thing. What you're going to look for is the width and the height. And let's go with 64. If you don't have it already, just type it in. Highlight it, type it in. 64 by 64. I got my resolution. It will either say resolution or DPI or something where it's going to be pixels per inch. I just got mine at 150. And I make sure that this setting says pixels. The background, you can have white, black background color. Just leave it on white. if you are so inclined. RGB color, I wouldn't worry about a lot of this stuff. The only thing that I'm really worried about is the pixel dimensions. Right now, we're just going to roll with 64 by 64. We're going to hit create. Now, you see this little white, this little speck back here? That's actually going to be your canvas because you are really going with 64 pixels by 64 pixels. You are making pixel art. I'm going to show you something very quickly. I'm going to go with new, and I am going to go with something I normally work with. Let's just go with 4,000 pixels by like 4,000 pixels. I'm going to hit create. Now I got this little grid set up here. I may not have the grid set up, but let's just say that, let's just say for argument's sake, I'm going to take this grid off. Or at least I think I may. Well, I don't want to waste any time with that. So let's say I'm going to go over here, and I got my paintbrush, right? So I got my paintbrush, and I'm going to choose this. And let's say I just go in here, and I start painting, right? And I'm trying to paint this character. And I don't know what I'm designing. This isn't important to what I'm painting, right? I'm just kind of painting something. Maybe this character has some armor or whatever. Shouldn't have did that. And I don't know why I'm doing all this green, but I want you to see that this is a painting, right? This is just some little weird painting that we have here. And what you are painting with are pixels. These are not vectors. Vectors means that when you zoom in, nothing changes. So people use vectors for things like t-shirts and logo designs and billboards. Those are vectors. This is a pixel, and it doesn't look like it, but this technically is pixel art. I will show you why. So it's still painting, it's still painted, it's still painted. We zoom in, and look at that. You see where we zoom in here, and you can see the little squares? Those are called pixels. The reason why it is called pixel art is because the document size is just very, very small. I have to zoom in all the way in order to get a pixelated image. This is the way images used to look back in the day, which is why you had pixel art for things like Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. It was pixelated. And so that's just what pixel art is. So you can see our canvas looks very small. So if we go over here to our navigator, if your setup does not look like this, do not worry. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to let you know that this is pixel art, and I am going to show you how to set up your canvas for what we need to do for this particular course. It's not going to be very hard. So I'm going to go ahead and stop now, and I will see you in the next video.